So good evening, everybody. My name is Annie Regan. I am the Senior Campaigns Director at Penn Future. Penn Future is an environmental nonprofit in Pennsylvania working to shape environmental policy at all government levels. Our goal is to ensure everyone has a stable climate, clean air, pure water, and a responsive democracy. I'm very excited to serve as the moderator for tonight's webinar with our strategic partner, Conservation Voters of Pennsylvania. Next slide, please.
Sorry, technical difficulties.
All good. Awesome. So before we get started, I wanted to go through a few nuts and bolts for our webinar tonight. If you would like to enable closed captioning, please look to the bottom of your screen. You will see the word captions. You can click that and then click the option to enable closed captioning. After the event, we'll send an email to everyone with the recording of the presentation, as well as links and resources shared in the chat. We will hold questions until the end. Please feel free to add questions in the Q&A section as we go along, and we will try our best to answer all of the questions. Allegheny County Civic Engagement Coordinator Natalie Davidson is leading technical support tonight, so please feel free to note if you have issues in the Q&A section or send a chat message to the hosts and panelists for this webinar, and she will provide Zoom assistance. Next slide, please. Awesome. So before I pass it over, I wanted to introduce you all to our energy team. This includes myself as Senior Campaigns Director and my colleagues Rob Altenberg, Penn Future Senior Director for Energy and Climate, and Donna Kohut, Penn Future's Policy Manager for Sustainable Economics. This team works on submitting technical comments to regulatory agencies, testifying at legislative committee hearings, drafting legislation, producing reports and white papers, and much, much more. If you have any energy-related questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly. My colleague Donna will put my email in the chat. Next slide, please. Next, I want to introduce our amazing Joint Government Affairs team, led by Penn Future's Director of Government Affairs, Adam Nagel, and CVPA's Political and Legislative Director, Katie Bloom. This team is working in Harrisburg to ensure sustainable and forward-thinking energy legislation is prioritized. Their team includes Tim Hayes, State Policy Manager, Julia Warner, Advocacy Manager, Ren Gainey, Advocacy Manager, and Matt Sultan, Federal Policy Manager. Next slide, please. And in just a few minutes, we'll hear a few introductory words from our executive leadership of both organizations, including Patrick McDonnell, CEO and President at Penn Future, and Molly Parzan, Executive Director at Conservation Voters of Pennsylvania. Now to kick us off, let's hear from Pat.
Great. Thank you so much, Annie. I'm Pat McDonnell. I'm the President and CEO of Penn Future. Just wanted to take a moment to thank you all for spending some time with us here tonight. Happy to kick off the conversation. As Annie said, this topic has been an issue for both of our organizations, Penn Future and CVPA. I don't think it's any secret Pennsylvania is finding itself in an energy crisis. Across the Commonwealth, people are feeling impacts every day in rising home energy costs and decreased reliability. Pennsylvanians are paying more every month for the electricity they depend on, while state leaders continue to delay urgently needed reforms. The result of this political paralysis in Harrisburg is that working families are being squeezed harder, not just by their electric bills, but by ripple effects that raise the price on everything from groceries to housing. And prices will only continue to rise until the crisis is effectively addressed. We must be clear-eyed about how we got here. This crisis is caused by chronic over-reliance on volatile fracked gas and other dirty fossil fuels, a failure to prepare for the inevitable retirement of coal plants despite years of notice, a powerful fossil fuel industry that is bought and paid for state policies that favor coal, oil, and gas, a grid operator that's prioritizing costly fossil fuel projects over less expensive energy projects, and has responded to energy demands with severe price increases on ratepayers. And the latest edition that has many Pennsylvanians concerned, an uptick of energy hungry data centers coming into the Commonwealth. I'll turn it over to my colleague Molly, who will explain a little more about the impacts of all of this. Molly.
Thank you so much, Pat, and thank you so much for everyone who is joining us here tonight to talk about this critical issue. My name is Molly Parson. I'm Executive Director at Conservation Voters of Pennsylvania. CVPA is the people-powered statewide political voice for the environment. We do a couple things. We elect leaders who champion our environment. We promote racially and economically just environmental policies. We educate Pennsylvanians about key issues like the one we're going to talk about today, and then we work to hold our elected officials accountable. Pennsylvania's outdated pro fossil fuel policy is not only hitting people's wallets, Pennsylvania is also losing out on the next generation of energy infrastructure, from solar and storage to transmission. We're losing out to neighboring states. Even large fossil fuel producing states like Texas are successfully adding renewable energy to the grid, to their mix, and seeing costs go down. Meanwhile, in Pennsylvania, we currently only get about 4% of our energy from clean and renewable sources. 4% is just way too low, and it does not meet the moment we're in. This over reliance on fossil fuels is having devastating consequences too. In recent cold weather events, over 70% of Pennsylvania's gas plants were not able to run as expected, causing grid instability and significant price increases. This is really a pivotal moment we're in. And despite what some legislators and oil and gas CEOs and their allies say, more fracked gas, increased pipeline infrastructure, leaving the regional greenhouse gas initiative, these are not solutions. This is a pivotal moment, and it's also a personal moment. I got my energy bill the other day and it was twice as high as it usually is this past month. My father called me today and he told me that his bill this month for a relatively small home, paid for by two retirees, topped out at over $1,200 for 1 month. That is completely unacceptable and unsustainable. Pennsylvania has a choice to make. We can either cling to a fossil fuel dominated past that is growing more and more expensive and less reliable, or we can chart a better, bolder new path, a path that prioritizes tested, affordable, clean energy solutions. Solutions that put residents first, that protect working families from skyrocketing energy bills, and that build a more affordable future for anyone and everyone. The clean energy economy is not a threat, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for jobs, for investment, for lower costs, and for healthier communities, most of all. The time to act is now, and we're going to take the rest of the time today to tell you about some very concrete actions that we can take. I am so excited to introduce our two fantastic government affairs leads, Katie Bloom, Conservation Voters of PA's Political and Legislative Director, and Adam Nagel, Penn Future's Director of Government Affairs. They're going to take the rest of our time and walk us through our affordability agenda, which offers both short-term and long-term solutions to the crisis we find ourselves in. Again, thank you so much for being here. We're excited to dig in on the policy.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Molly.
Thank you, Molly. Go for it, Katie.
Oh, no, feel free to do. There we go.
Okay. So
All you,
why
man.
so why is this energy affordability agenda needed now? I mean, as you can see on the slide here, we're not competitive. We are losing clean energy. We are losing clean energy investments to other states. The Independent Fiscal Office recently released a new research brief that kind of highlighted the cost pressures and the energy imbalance pressures that we are facing here. So over the past 7 years, electricity bills have gone up around 46% in Pennsylvania compared to Ohio, which was 40%, and other states in the PJM grid. We can talk about PJM more, where it was 41%. So not good across the board if you're in the PJM PJM territory. But Pennsylvania is worse because we are more reliant on fossil fuels, particularly gas, than other neighboring states or other states in the PJM territory. So that is a big pressure for us here. Too much gas, prices are rising there, thus our energy bills are going up. That's a part of the equation. Loss of clean federal infrastructure investments. We've seen a lot of damage done over the past year plus, resulting from the cancellation of or delay from investment that equals jobs, and we have record high energy bills. So this agenda is needed now more than ever, and as we'll talk about a little later, it's also very timely based on what's happening in Harrisburg. But let's jump into the specific parts of the agenda itself, and Katie and I'll run you through that. So next slide, please.
All right. Our affordability agenda has three sections. It's going to be immediate, short term, and long term. We want to make sure that we provide as many options as possible for our decision makers in Pennsylvania, things they can do immediately to start bringing relief to those most in need, all the way to things that will help over the next couple of years. Next slide. Starting with some easy solutions. The first one is a summer moratorium. I don't know if any of you on here have ever been struggling in life, but there is an opportunity not only to get LIHEAP, low income heating assistance funding, but also to have a shut off moratorium during those cold winter months. And that is really important, especially for people really, really in need, especially as we are seeing the effects of climate change and more extreme weather that is happening. And what this would do would be a summer moratorium, because as we keep seeing this extreme weather, this would be a really good opportunity to help low income folks and folks who need that extra help, or folks with medical conditions, etc., keep their electric from being shut off in the summer. Think about if your grandmother is diabetic and she's on a fixed income and needs to pay on a budget plan, but she's got to keep her insulin refrigerated. This is going to be a great thing. There's also reforming the DCED energy program. They haven't had great policies. So actually our colleague Donna, who you might see in the chat here, is looking at some of those programs going forward, and how do we do this so that we do have a sustainable economy that really focuses a clean energy economy. Next slide. Short-term solutions, there are a lot. I'm going to skip over 1260 a little bit because I know Adam's going to talk a little bit more about that later. But some other things that we want to do, you heard Pat mention earlier, data centers, they are another level onto this. And it's not just data centers. What about the Beaver Cracker plant, even, that are big polluters in places? So we want to make sure that what we call large loads, that's above a certain megawatt electric usage, is going to have to report everything. And they will have to pay and face consequences if they fail to comply with that reporting. It shouldn't be hard, but it has been hard in Pennsylvania, even just around the fracking industry, as many of you attending tonight know. Another thing is, what about clean infrastructure siting? We need to get solar on the grid. We know that solar and battery storage are going to help bring down those costs. And this is a short-term solution. We need to build these things. Also, public utility proceedings. There's a great bill out there. I believe the co-sponsor memo is out already. And we are going to want public participation. Public participation is so hard when we're dealing with confusing regulatory entities. You have to go through 6 pages just to figure out how you can make a comment there. And how do you find out it's time to make a comment? So there's a lot of things we can do to make sure that there is more transparency in some of those regulatory processes. I already talked a little bit about large loads, but there's another thing here about large load management. That kind of comes in like with battery storage. If we want data centers to come in, which we really don't, we want them to bring clean energy and pay for it themselves, right? But that also is going to include things like storage so that we can maximize as much as possible the use of renewables over gas if they're coming. Um, and also, and this one's really interesting, is and some of you might be looking at this going, hey, what's this? Incentivize upgrades at gas plants. I thought you guys hated gas. This one is actually really interesting, and we're actually pretty excited about it because as we have a lot of decision makers in this state that do think gas is a solution, even though we know it's not, there are things that our existing gas plants can do right now, including just simple weatherization or co-location with renewables, like adding solar and storage to the same facility site, that can generate more electrons on the grid just by making them have better plants. That seems like a pretty simple solution. And maybe some of those pro-gas decision makers might be able to go for something, even given the nature of our legislature. So I'm going to go. That is immediate and short-term solutions. I'm going to kick it over to Adam to dive into some of the longer-term stuff.
Thanks, Katie. Next slide, please. All right. So long-term solutions. I'm really going to focus on one of these here. We've been talking, Penn Future, CVPA, we've been talking about this for a very long time. Updating Pennsylvania's energy portfolio standards, our alternative energy portfolio standards. First passed in 2004, amended in 2008. At that time, the alternative energy portfolio standards were ahead of their time. Since then, not so much. Other states across the country have adopted renewable portfolio standards or alternative energy portfolio standards that go far and beyond what we originally had here in Pennsylvania, and we have failed to keep up as a result. As the slide indicates, and as we've said previously during this presentation, we only source around 4% of our energy from renewable sources. That is just not good enough, and is a big reason why we are seeing some of the price volatility that we're seeing here in Pennsylvania. So there are a lot of proposals out there with respect to how to update our alternative energy portfolio standards. The primary focus, one of them anyways, the primary focus for us is making sure that we get to that 35% by 2035. We believe it is still doable. We are clearly running out of time, but with progress that other states have made, no matter where they are, they have been able to spin up more renewable energy in a very fast amount of time. So it's still doable. We need to fight for 35 by 35, increase our energy production, better balance our energy portfolio to help bring down prices and costs for consumers. Next slide, please. All right, so we've thrown a lot at you in this energy affordability agenda. We have a bunch of things that are already moving that are related or semi-related to what we're talking about here. And so we'll just do a very quick rundown of what these bills do and where they kind of stand in the process. So the first one, House Bill 1260, that is the Solar Ready Warehouses legislation currently sponsored by State Representative Rusnak. So this was a bill that Penn Future co-authored with former state representative, current Lehigh County executive Josh Siegel. It was introduced last year. As of this moment, it is almost through the House. We moved one step closer last week to securing House passage. We need one more vote in order to do that, which we hope will take place in March. The bill is very simple. Two parts. First part requires that 40% of a warehouse roof or distribution center roof essentially be built to withhold the weight of solar panels. So 40% of your roof, if you're a warehouse or distribution center above a certain square footage, you have to make sure that your roof can hold the weight of a solar panel or mass group of solar panels. So that's part the first. Part the second provides an optional local authorization for a tax break for existing structures. So if you are a warehouse that already exists and you did not build your roof to withhold the weight of solar panels, you can get a tax break potentially from your local tax authority on the cost of upgrades up to a certain amount. So we want to that really serves as to incentivize existing structures to come up to the code that we believe they should, to help use these tens of millions of square footage that we have across Pennsylvania currently sitting empty. These massive warehouse structures that are in Northeast Pennsylvania, Southeast Pennsylvania, Central Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, they're everywhere. So we want to make sure that we can leverage these facilities to help harness a clean energy future here in Pennsylvania, and they are able to do that. They can do that. We should demand it of them. That's what House Bill 1260 does. And again, we are hoping to get that moved over to the Senate in the next couple of months. The next one I will touch on very quickly. We're going to go out of order down the line here, so we're going to go bookend. One end of the book to the opposite end of the book. So PUC Public Interest, House Bill 2184. This is a bill that was brought to our attention by Representative Danielle Friel Otten. She came up with this idea from similar legislation in West Virginia. Penn Future, we helped her draft it to fit into Pennsylvania's utility law. So within Pennsylvania utility law, that's Title 66. If you are like me and want to know that, it's a very in-depth. It's very long. Within Title 66, public interest is mentioned 2 or 3 dozen times. It's mentioned a lot. The PUC has to consider public interest in all of these different kinds of proceedings and decisions it makes. But it's never defined. So what this legislation does is it simply defines what public interest should be, or what some of the factors are that we think there should be, and what Representative Friel-Otten feels they should be. So things like renewable energy, things like energy efficiency, things like considering cost ramifications for low-income customers, things like environmental justice. All of these things are factors in this proposed legislation. We are hoping that we can get a committee vote on this sometime this year. It's a really important bill. We think we should be defining what public interest is, and we need to have a forward-looking approach to that here in Pennsylvania. And we are very high on this bill, hoping to get it moving sometime in the near future. This was a new one, really just introduced within the last 2 weeks. So this is almost an up-to-the-minute update for all of you who joined us here tonight. With that, I will stop talking again and turn it over to Katie.
All right. Thanks, Adam. I'm going to talk about 3 other bills. One, to kind of go back to data centers. And I do want to be clear because I realize a lot, and we've been noticing this, a lot of the public, I'm just going to take a moment, doesn't understand what we're talking about when we say data centers. For people's reference, there is a data center in Center City, Philadelphia. Who knew? But what we're talking about, those are like 5, 10, 15 megawatt facilities, right? But what we're talking about when we say data centers, it's AI data centers or hyperscalers. You'll also hear that term. Those are 1,500 megawatts. 4,000 megawatts. That's what we're talking about when we're discussing data centers. We still need those small data centers to be on Zoom right now. So there's 2 different types of data centers that people might be talking about. Anyway, back to data centers. There is a data center reporting bill from Representative Mullins. And what this is going to do is require DCNR to collect reports from data centers about their water usage, their energy usage, all of it. If they don't report, they have to have a penalty. One of the big things that's happening with data centers is we don't know sometimes what's real. A data center could way lowball their energy usage, their projections that they give to our grid operator. They could lowball that. They could lowball their water usage. They could also maybe even go too high. Maybe they're overestimating the development they could do. We need some real information about how these data centers operate so that we can continue to put appropriate guardrails around it. Another one is a data center model ordinance bill. And no matter what other folks might be saying, there's a lot of misconceptions about this one out there right now. I want to say that a bill where the Data Center Coalition and Industry Coalition for Data Centers doesn't like this bill I'm probably going to like it. And you can see that testimony from the Energy Committee the other week. And Penn Future, our colleagues here, Pat even testified there are some fixes that we could make to this bill. We can talk about having stakeholders help inform this process so that we can make sure that it is as many guardrail options as possible, especially with some voice of some of the environment participating. And I'm going to lift up because I'm going to be there in about 35 minutes when we're done with this webinar. As a local elected official myself, model ordinances are so important. Pennsylvania, I think, is ranked second in the country for the number of municipalities in a state. It is a lot. It's like almost 3,000. That's a ton of municipalities. And I know small municipalities like mine, we don't have the resources, we don't have the funds for fancy lawyers and all of that. So we rely on wherever we can find model ordinances. In fact, shout out, I believe it's March 10th, we'll be having another webinar around local ordinances. And I recommend folks come to that. But it's really good. The state, as a statewide presence, if we can get folks to go forward, they have a wider audience. It's going to be a lot easier for people to access a model ordinance. We can make some amendments about who's involved and things like that, and Penn Future's already testified on that. But as a local elected, I'm pretty excited about having more tools in my toolbox, even if I don't use them. And the last one that I'll talk about in terms of active legislation is a clean manufacturing bill. And this is from Representative Fiedler. And what this does, you may have heard our organizations talking about the EDGE tax credit. We've been pretty neutral on it over the years. There's some things in there we don't like, and there's some things in there we do like. It's a very mixed bag of tax credits provided to folks. But what this bill would do is have something out there for clean manufacturing. One of the things that we know, especially without the IRA, is we need to spur clean manufacturing, whether it's the manufacturing processes themselves or things that will clean our environment. So this could be anything from clean steel programs for that large scale industry to making sure heat pumps and things like that. If you are doing that kind of work in Pennsylvania and it's benefiting clean industries, you could be eligible for a tax credit. Next slide, and I think it's back to Adam.
Okay, so all of this takes on even more meaning currently because of where we are in the calendar as it relates to the legislative process. Although in Pennsylvania, we have apparently in the past, let's say 3 to 10 years, moved to an all year round budget cycle. It was always all year round. It's just that in the past, budget was finalized a little bit sooner than it is currently. So where are we in this process, and how do all of these things that we have talked about over the past 20 minutes or so relate to the budget process? So if you look at the image there to the I don't know. The image there on the screen, we are currently at the part where governor submits budget to legislature. That also just happened last week. And we are entering the phase of legislative review and enactment of budget, which by law should happen by June 30th. Typically does not happen by June 30th anymore. As folks who've been paying attention know, budget ended in November last year. So hopeful for June 30th, but never expect it. So the other piece about budget that's important is that this is where a lot of legislative horse trading happens. And this is where a lot of legislative items or other items come into play, where the Senate, the House, and the governor come together to agree on how to move forward on some things that may or may not be related to how much money or funding a particular department gets. This year, we think there will be a significant emphasis on affordability, on data centers. And I think, for those who heard the governor's budget address or read about it or saw some clips of it on social media, that he talked about a couple of those things quite a bit. So what we have just gone through as far as Penn Future and CVPA's affordability agenda, these are the principles that we are fighting for throughout this budget season. So that hopefully, when we get to the part where there's enactment of a budget, whenever that happens, if there are legislative trades or bills become law as a part of the horse trading that happens in Harrisburg around this time of year, that our these principles are represented to the best of our ability. That also requires help from everyone here tonight and everyone who receives emails from both of these organizations. It also relates directly to an event that we are hosting in May. So if we go to the next slide, I think I did that right. Oh, look at that. I did. Go ahead, Katie. I stole some of your thunder, but go for it.
That is fine. Come join us. You will be hearing soon from our amazing civic engagement team. Any of us at both organizations. The government affairs team is really excited to have our now second annual lobby day on Monday, May 4th in Harrisburg. We are going to be talking about all things energy affordability. I am also working on convincing our digital teams to make, it's May the 4th be with you if you're a Star Wars fan. So maybe we'll have something fun there as well. But we do encourage anyone who is able to make it to sign up to join us at Lobby Day. You are on our email list. You'll be getting that information in the coming weeks and months and updates there. And for folks who might not be able to go to Harrisburg and lobby in person, now that we have one under our belt and we're learning things, we're going to have some other options and ways for you to participate. And even if that's maybe you get to meet with your legislator actually in your district if you can't travel all the way to Harrisburg. And we'll be in touch about all of those opportunities.
Next slide, please. All right, so thank you to both Katie and Adam. That was a lot of information, and we will definitely make sure to follow up with the slides and links so that folks have that to really dive into the material there. Um, but before we go into the Q&A portion of our webinar, and I'm seeing there's already some really great questions in the Q&A box, I want to call attention to tonight's call to action. So, we are asking folks to sign onto our joint energy affordability agenda petition. So far, we have about 700 Pennsylvanians signed on, and we'd like to have at the very least another 1,000. And then we will present this petition to our statewide decision makers to let them know that Pennsylvanians are ready for energy affordability solutions. If you already signed on because you're on our email list, we want to thank you so much for your support. We also encourage you to share this petition with your neighbors, coworkers, friends, family members, or anyone who wants to see a pathway to cheaper energy bills and a more sustainable future in Pennsylvania. So my colleague Donna will drop the link in the chat, and here we also have a QR code that you can scan your phone. And then we have a link, and just wanted to note that this link is caps sensitive to the capital letters. So make sure that the cheap clean energy PA, each word is capitalized. So just take a moment or two to sign on, or have that link ready to share with your network. And we hope to have an update by the end of this month to see where we're at for this petition. So thank you so much. We'll wait another minute and then we'll get right into the Q&A. All right. Next slide, please, Neil. Awesome. All right. Um, Um, thanks to everyone who submitted your questions in the Q&A feature of the webinar. If there are more questions, feel free to keep utilizing that. Um, all of the panelists are available to answer your questions, but we might not be able to get to a lot of them. And we will make sure to answer the questions after the webinar as much as we can. We may not know all of the answers to your questions, but we can certainly look into it and follow up. I know some of us have a hard stop right before 7, so we'll try to get through this. The first question I have from the audience is, how do we increase our solar capacity in Pennsylvania without destroying our farmland? That is a question we see a lot.
Yeah. There are a lot of options for solar. We have a lot of unused old brownfield sites. We have warehouses, as you heard Adam talk about. There are also things like carports. There are solar carports that can help. My local grocery store has one, and it helps with 40% of their electric bill. And there's a charging station. There are a lot of ways that we can do solar without taking farmland. I do want to add the caveat, though, that sometimes there are small family farms that might want a couple acres to have some lease income for that land. And I will say that if a local family farm wants to do that, that's their choice. And frankly, I'd rather see that on a local family farm to keep the little dairy farm alive than a warehouse being built because you can take out solar panels and you can't take out a warehouse. But there are a lot of other options other than farmland.
Awesome. Moving on to the next question. Sorry, there's a lot of them, sorting through them. Let's do this one. So, Governor Shapiro left Reggie under pressure from the state Republican-led Senate. I am still waiting for something to replace it, whether the lightning plan or something else. Is Governor Shapiro truly supporting an all of the above strategy, or is he giving renewables lip service and tilting the tables toward natural gas?
I love this question because we are very angry and sad and mourning the loss of Reggie. And we are continuing to talk to the governor's office and legislators about it because not a lot can meet what Reggie was going to do in terms of investments that we could have made in clean energy and our communities, as well as the carbon reduction. So we are still grieving the loss of Reggie. But I do want to say, in terms of Governor Shapiro, time will tell. In terms of our legislature, the time will tell. And that's part of what our energy affordability agenda is going to be doing. We need to make sure, and this is, I think, where a lot of you also come in, we need to let the governor's office and our legislators know that things like this energy affordability agenda and being really, really pro environment this time around when it comes to our budget process is going to be really important. So, yes, we're mourning that. Time will tell about the governor. He's had some social media posts talking about all of the above energy. And yes, it includes renewable energy, but that's a social media post. And we want both the governor and our pro environment legislators to really step up. And if they want to do something in the budget, they've got about 5 months, and we'd love to see it.
Thank you, Katie. Um, the next question I have, I saw there were a few people asking this questions, and there was questions about what is 35 by 35. Adam, if you can kind of go over what that is and kind of grouping all these questions together of why Pennsylvania's clean energy percentage in our energy mix is so low. What's a good percentage to strive for? There's a lot of numbers out there. If you can kind of break that down for folks.
I'll certainly do my best. So essentially, when we talk about any of the percentages we're talking about, I think I answered this at least in one question. What we're talking about is whether it's 30 by 30 or 35 by 35 or whatever by whenever. We are talking about a percentage of energy coming from tier one energy sources under Pennsylvania's alternative energy portfolio standard. Now, of course, in a lot of the proposals that want to update or change our AEPS, they're also in many instances talking about what qualifies as a tier one energy source. So, I think I think our perspective on that from both organizations, it should be the cleanest sources of energy. Obviously, Governor Shapiro has his press legislation that has a mix of advanced nuclear technology in with renewable energy in with some other things. Other legislators have perhaps different ideas. But that's what we're talking about when we're talking about blend is tier one sources, whatever those may be. And we're talking about a year. So in this instance, it's 35 by 35. And I'll just say, as far as whether something's realistic, there are aspects of this. Obviously, our renewable portfolio is very low right now. I think even the most optimistic of us would say that 35 by 35 is a really good number if we can get there. Anything above and beyond that, time is running short. So there is sort of a technological and financial and economic calculation that has to go into all of that. 35 by 35 is a really good number. It would help balance out our energy portfolio significantly. That would essentially take us to roughly because if you think about it, currently we're at roughly 60% gas, and then 30% nuclear, and then 6 or 7% coal, and then 3 or 4% everything else, mostly renewable. So to get from 4 to 35 is going to cost. It's going to take a lot of work. We can do it. We believe we can do it, and we will if we can pass legislation that actually requires it. But ultimately, there are some challenges there, simply based on how far behind the curve Pennsylvania is. So we need a number that reflects better balance, but is also feasible in a lot of ways. So that's the only way I would frame some of this conversation as well.
Thank you, Adam. My next question is that someone asked, why does one part of this agenda support gas plants? I think we talked about that. If we could just reiterate that gas plant efficiency aspect.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that it supports more efficient plants. So, and this goes back to part of the equation of why our bills have gotten higher. Because what is it? I forget. I think it's 20% have to do with the PJM capacity market. Luckily for me, Penn Future and CVPA have done a lot of work on what PJM and the capacity market are over the past year. So if you have questions, I'm sure we have links to previous webinars or materials that no one knew I was going to cite here that we can provide after to folks about what the capacity market is and what PJM does. So I'm not necessarily going to rehash all that here, but the capacity market has a sizable influence on our bill. So why am I raising the capacity market with gas plant efficiency? So what happened in the aftermath of other cold streaks like we're currently still going through this month and the end of last month happened in 2022 with Winter Storm Elliott. And at that time, there were significant gas plant outages that almost led to blackouts across Pennsylvania on Christmas Eve, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. So PJM in the aftermath of, and then Texas is another example. I saw someone raised Texas in the Q&A as well, where this happened in 2021. So one of the lessons that PJM learned is that gas plants are not necessarily as reliable as they once thought. So they rated them very highly prior to them taking a look at this and saying, well, we may have erred there and we're going to correct the mistake. So correcting the mistake, however, they essentially downgraded the reliability of gas plants, which then dramatically impacted the capacity market because we needed more energy to make up for what was no longer there based on the reliability of gas plants, which is one of the reasons why our rates have gone up so substantially over the past year or so. So one thing that you'll hear from legislators and industry across Pennsylvania is that we need more gas plants in order to provide more energy. That does not fix the capacity market or reliability problem. That only, it does, it's either net neutral or a net negative. All right. So when it comes to just reliability, one way to increase reliability for gas plants is to incentivize or mandate them to essentially weatherize, like Katie mentioned earlier, co-locate with renewables, We're already seeing this from elements of industry as there was the deal between EOS in Southwest PA and Talon to essentially do something like this that Governor Shapiro himself touted in the last quarter of last year, I believe. So where you can pair a gas plant with batteries and renewables for storage components. So, this is already happening. We would like to see it be supported industry wide because what that does is it increases reliability rating for gas plants and it decreases your bill. So we don't have more gas plants; we have more efficient gas plants for what we already have, and I think that's an important distinction to make. We are asking for better versions of what we have, not more of the worse versions of what we have. So that's where that distinction comes into play. More efficiency, lower bills.
Thank you. We'll have a few more questions. Okay, so can you explain the summer moratorium and how can we push for that?
Yeah, so I think I explained it well enough earlier, but just to refresh, December 1st to March 31st, we have an existing moratorium during those cold months. Um, what we want to push for is a summer moratorium. Um, Air conditioners, fans, all of those things that help keep us cool and safe and healthy during those really hot summer months as we are seeing that extensive not extensive, I'm sorry, more extreme weather pattern changes, these things will help those who are most disadvantaged, people of low income, people with medical needs, as I had mentioned earlier. Your grandma might have insulin she needs to keep refrigerated. That is also important during those high summer months when the usage is that is one of those spike usages where people see those higher bills. It is the summer months, the hot summer months, and the cold winter months. One way you can help is to start advocating right now. There are some things out there, there's various pieces of legislation, but you all have your own elected officials as well. And just saying, hey, I don't know if you know that this is a possibility. We can mirror the existing authorizing legislation for winter moratorium to a summer moratorium. Why not do that? Um, so you can go ahead and talk to your legislator right now about it. It would be cool to see that maybe happen before the summer.
Thank you so much. We'll do two more questions or so, so we can go over next steps. Another question that I'm getting from a few people, interconnection delays are a major bottleneck. Are there specific reforms Pennsylvania could adopt to speed up solar plus storage deployment without compromising grid reliability?
This is a very large question with a couple components. Um, I will say to answer the latter part of that question, and Adam chime in. To answer the latter part of that question, a lot of the legislation that we're talking to could help speed up that solar and storage. One of the things when PJM, our grid operator, reports out, they talk about solar and gas and storage, and they talk about it separately. They really should start talking about it together, and that might make a bigger impact. Another thing with the grid bottleneck, there have been some reforms suggested. There's a great working group here in Pennsylvania that both CDPA and Penn Future are part of. There's multiple states working on this. We know that PJM needs reform. They recently had a comment period open. We had made comments. Penn Future has made comments. You can see the governor has also done advocacy for that. And we also had a bill pass the House, and again, TBD on if the Senate picks it up. But even just transparency from our grid operator would be nice. We would love to see transparent votes. We want to see how their board of governors is voting, because we also know that it's not necessarily a board made up of all environmentalists who are trying to push these things. And it's going to be even more difficult for us to enact a lot of reforms and things like that. And we'll really have to do a lot of advocacy because the Trump administration is also pushing for more of that dirty energy to be fast tracked. Adam, if you wanted to add anything onto that.
I'll just say that from the state perspective, the energy affordability agenda actually talks about this with citing for clean energy. We one of the things that you'll hear from and that we hear from PJM when they come and testify at hearings in Pennsylvania, they say that one of the concerns they hear is around siting here in the Commonwealth. And we have roughly 2,600 municipalities. Many of them have their own separate ordinances for that sort of thing. We need to get a better handle on how we're citing clean energy in Pennsylvania, making sure that we don't have any delays on our end, making sure that our backyard is good to go as we're engaging in advocacy with PJM and the federal government as well around some of these things. So I'll say that at least from the state side, we're on it, we're talking about it, and we're trying to make sure that we can get some movement in Harrisburg on it.
Katie, this one might be for you before you hop off. I know you have another meeting to get to. Talking about more the legislation that was proposed, do you know which bills have labor support or just involved with labor that they would likely to support with your
Yeah.
involvement?
We have done a lot of work. Conservation voters, the Pennsylvania building trades. We have regular meetings to talk about things. We have a blue-green working group that also includes um, Chair Fiedler, um, who not only chairs the Energy Committee, but also the Blue-Green caucus within the legislature. So we talk about those bills. For the last 2 years, we have introduced a blue-green legislative package, and some of this has shown up in there. We do not agree on everything all of the time. That's okay. We have different missions in the work that we do. However, um, we all like clean air. We all like clean water. And we have worked really hard to try to find some middle ground. Advanced manufacturing, that is a bill that had joint support. And this year, we will be introducing at some point this spring another blue-green legislative package. And I also know that right now that working group is really supporting HB 1260 solar-ready warehouses. Those can be done with a lot of great union jobs, as well as helping get clean energy out there for us. So there is work. We don't agree on everything, but there are some bills that we do agree on.
Thank you so much. All right, there might be one more question. Someone asked a question about HB 1260, if that applies to data centers.
It does not. It applies specifically to warehouses and distribution centers, and those are defined within the bill. So it does not apply to data centers.
Awesome. I think I think those were all of the questions. There are some that we did not get to. I'm looking to see. Sorry, there are a ton. We can do one more, I think. Um, I guess this is a good one to end with. A lot of folks are asking about tracking this legislation to ensure that their legislator is voting the right way. There's a website to kind of see the process of where things are going legislatively, but I would also just really suggest that folks subscribe to Penn Future and CVPA's email list where we kind of alert folks when it's critical to reach out to your legislators. Um, but we can also send in the follow-up email the link of where you can kind of track to see where certain legislation is going. And I will also make sure to have all of the slides here and the list of all the bills that we're having in our energy affordability plan. And it won't be on you to kind of keep track it. You can rely on our organizations to alert you when is the time to reach out to your legislator. So hopefully that's less work on you and you can kind of take our letters, our action alerts, and we'll let you know when we have lobby meetings. And there might be upcoming webinars, events, depending on how legislation is moving. So, um, thank you everybody for spending your evening with us, an entire hour, and for your questions. There are some questions that we still haven't answered, and I will work with my colleagues to see if we can find answers and follow up personally. Um, but if anyone has any other questions in the meantime, you have my email. And we hope you can elevate our energy affordability petition, join us for Lobby Day, um, and subscribe to our newsletters to stay informed. So thank you so much. Have a good evening, and we'll talk soon.